welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm very happy that you're interested in the topic of data principles. And as we heard already, the focus today is Findable. My name is Katarzyna Biernacka, as you already heard, and I think the introduction was so extensive and so good already that I don't have any details more to give you. That's why I would start with our topic. So what is data principles? In 2016, Force 11, which is a group of researchers, persons from libraries, archives, publishing houses, and research funders, has written principles for the preparation of research data. These 4 principles comprise 4 objectives. The data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. In the today webinar, we will focus on the F, like findable. What does this mean? Findable has 4 principles. The first one says that the data and metadata are assigned a globally unique and persistent identifier. Second, the data are described with rich metadata. Third, the metadata clearly and explicitly include the identifier of the data they describe. And fourth, the metadata are registered or indexed in a searchable resource. Today we will focus on these 2 points, the persistent identifier and the searchable resource. But don't worry, we will come back to the topic of metadata and standards in the following webinars. So what is a searchable resource? There are different ways to make your data discoverable. For example, you could use the indexing via Google Spider, but actually the best way to make your objects findable is to put it into a repository. A repository or repositories are databases in which digital objects can be archived, documented, and published. We distinguish between 3 different repositories. We have this discipline-specific repositories, cross-disciplinary repositories, and institutional ones. When you want to choose one, you should first choose one that is subject-specific and common in your discipline. If you don't find it there, or if you don't have any repository that is common in your community, find a repository at re3data.org. re3data.org is a catalog of repositories where we can search for different repositories, browse via subjects, topics, or keywords. It's a very huge catalog. But if you don't find a suitable repository there, you can choose your institutional one. I don't want to say that an institutional one is not a good choice. All of these repositories are a good choice, but you want your data to be findable. So if you use a repository that is used in your community, it is more probably that the data will be found. And if your institution doesn't have a repository, use a free cross-disciplinary repository, like Zenodo, for example. There are different criteria for selecting a suitable repository. You should take care that the repository has a certification, like a core trust seal, that it's assigned a persistent identifier, like a DOI or a handle. You should check what the data access is, if you can make your data open, restricted, or maybe closed, and who has access to the data. Very important that there are clear terms of use for data authors and users. So it's on the one hand, it's important for you to know if you have to pay when you allocate your data in a repository. And on the other hand, it's important for the reusers if there is an embargo period or if they have to pay for using your data. What are persistent identifiers anyway? It's a unique naming or referencing of a digital resource like a journal article, or in this case, research data, but it can as well reference to persons or institutions. It assigns a code that can be permanently and unambiguously referenced on the internet. It prevents dead links from occurring if, for example, publishers change the internet address of a server. So it's very important for citations. And in this case, we use a DOI, a digital object identifier. It's the most frequently used for research data. It's citable, it's nationally and internationally recognized, and it has only 5 mandatory metadata fields to ensure citation, which are the creator of the data, the title, the publisher, the publication year, and the resource type. A DOI looks like you see in the example. You have a prefix and a suffix. The prefix is a number, which is a number of the institution. So if you know the number of your institution, you will always recognize the data that comes from this institution. You cannot provide a DOI by yourself. You always need an institution in between or a repository that provides the DOI. There are no standards how to use it. So for example, for new versions, it's not standardized, but it's commonly used that you use a point before, like you see in this example. And if you have parts of a bigger data sets, usually we use the slash before it. As I mentioned before, persistent identifier can reference people as well. So one of these examples is the Open Researcher and Contributor ID, the ORCID. It's a unique scientific identity, and it's run by a non-profit initiative. It's an alphanumeric 16-digit code, and the registration takes about 30 seconds. Of course, it's not done after 30 seconds because it's maintained by the researchers themselves, so it means that you should provide more information to have a really good profile. The good information is that ORCID is connected to Web of Science, Zenodo, DataCite, and similar ones. So if you publish your data or research articles and provide your ORCID, it will be automatically put into your ORCID profile, and then you get a beautiful portfolio of all your presentations. So I really recommend you to have an ORCID, especially as it's used by journals, research funders, and institutions, and it's more and more demanded when you want to publish. So I hope that after this webinar, you go and get your ORCID. Thank you very much.